You probably think you know what it means to see. You open your eyes and the world unfolds before you, a vast arrangement of shapes and colors, faces and places, light and shadow. Your mind labels everything with such speed and certainty. This is a tree, that is a stranger, the sky is blue. It feels so automatic, so natural, that you might never pause to question it. Of course, this is reality. Of course, this is what seeing is. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a quiet whisper stirs, nudging you to wonder, what if your eyes have never shown you the whole picture? What if what you call seeing is only the surface of something infinitely richer and more complex? This question doesn't arrive fully formed, nor does it ask for an immediate answer. It creeps in like the faintest hint of dawn, soft and subtle, touching the edges of your awareness in moments so ordinary they almost pass unnoticed. Perhaps you're standing at a window, watching rain slide down the glass, and suddenly the droplets seem less like water and more like tiny worlds reflecting light and shadow. Or you catch yourself hearing the laughter of a child in the distance, but for once you're not attaching meaning or expectation to it. Instead, you simply hear the pure sound, uncolored by your thoughts. These are the moments when the familiar world slips slightly out of its usual costume, when the ordinary reveals itself as something miraculous, something you've overlooked for so long that its presence feels like a secret made just for you. You realize you are not merely looking at the world, you are inside the act of looking itself. And this realization unsettles you, because it asks you to reconsider the foundation of your experience. What if all this meaning you've been assigning is not the world itself, but a story you've been telling yourself? This is no sudden epiphany, no grand awakening. It is a tiny fracture running through the glass of your certainty, catching light in unexpected ways. At first, you might try to repair it with explanations or distractions, clutching to the familiar narratives that have shaped your life. But the crack remains, a silent invitation to loosen your grip and lean into uncertainty. You could call this emerging clarity light, not the brightness that dazzles the eye, but the kind of illumination that reveals what has always been present beneath the surface. It is the stillness that follows the noise, the calm within the storm, the simple truth that shines when the fog of assumptions begins to lift. This light does not shout or insist. It simply exists, waiting for your attention. And when you notice it, even for a moment, it changes everything. The world you thought you knew feels less heavy, less defined by your judgments and expectations. The faces around you soften, the colors deepen. You begin to understand that seeing is not about naming or controlling, but about receiving, about allowing the world to show itself without interference. And yet, this light is not something you find out there in the objects or people or places you observe. It is something you uncover within yourself, a shift in the way you meet experience, a gentle letting go of the need to constantly interpret and predict. It is a subtle surrender to presence, a willingness to be present without the usual filters of fear or desire. As this light grows, it uncovers the cracks in your old worldview. You see the stories you've believed about who you are, what the world is, what your place in it should be, and recognize them as patterns, not truths. You feel the tension between the mind's habit of making meaning and the heart's invitation to simply be. And this tension is not a problem to be solved, but a space to inhabit with curiosity and compassion. You might catch yourself bargaining with this new vision. Is this real? Is this useful? Can I trust it? The mind resists, eager to return to familiar territory, to reclaim the certainty it has lost. But you know, deep down, that something has shifted irreversibly. The fog has lifted enough to glimpse the horizon beyond your old maps. And though you cannot fully describe it, you feel a quiet stirring of hope, a longing, a readiness. This is the first glimpse of light, not a destination, not a solution, but an opening. A momentary glimpse of something beyond the noise, a fragile invitation to see and be seen differently. It asks nothing more than your attention, and in return offers the possibility of freedom. Once you have tasted this light, you cannot unknow it. The question remains, persistent and gentle. What happens if you stop trying to make sense of the world and instead allow the world to make sense of you? And in the silence that follows that question, you begin to sense something else. It is as if a veil has lifted, revealing the subtle hum beneath the surface of things, the quiet pulse of existence that continues regardless of your judgments or expectations. This pulse is neither loud nor demanding. It simply is. Like the steady beating of a distant drum, it calls you to a rhythm you may have forgotten you knew. You remember deep within what it feels like to be part of something vast and unknowable, yet intimately familiar. The stories you've retold yourself about who you are and what your life must mean begin to soften, no longer rigid or absolute. They become like water, flowing and shifting with ease, rather than damming the river of your experience. You realize that for so long, you have been trying to grasp at meaning as if it were a solid object to hold on to. But this new light shows you that meaning is more like a dance, a dynamic interplay between what is and how you receive it. This realization does not erase your challenges or your doubts. It does not promise an easy path or instant peace. Instead, it invites you to step into a different relationship with your experience, a relationship built not on certainty or control, but on openness and trust. You begin to see that the act of seeing itself is not fixed or final. It is alive and unfolding, changing moment by moment as you allow it space to breathe. You are no longer merely a passive observer, nor are you a manipulator of what you see. You become a participant in a shared unfolding where meaning is co-created by the world and your willingness to receive it. And so, this first glimpse of light is both fragile and powerful. Fragile because it can be easily overshadowed by old habits and fears. Powerful because it holds the potential to transform everything you thought you knew. It asks you to let go not of your life or your responsibilities, but of the need to have all the answers, of the compulsion to define and control. It invites you to rest in a space of not knowing that is not empty, but full of possibility, full of presence. As you linger in this space, you might notice the subtle ways it begins to color your daily life. Perhaps you find yourself pausing more often, not out of hesitation, but out of curiosity. The way the light falls across a leaf, the sound of footsteps on a path, the fleeting expression on a stranger's face, all these moments become invitations to step deeper into presence. You find that the world no longer demands your immediate interpretation or judgment. It simply offers itself again and again, ready to be seen with fresh eyes. This is not a place of perfection or escape. It is a place of honesty and vulnerability, where the veil between illusion and reality thins just enough to let a new vision emerge. It is the quiet birth of seeing anew, the first soft whisper of light breaking through the shadows of conditioned perception. And though you cannot yet fully name what you have glimpsed, you know it is enough to begin, enough to change the direction of your journey, enough to open the door to what comes next. What happens now, you wonder? What if this light is not the end, but the beginning? What if the true journey is not about finding answers, but about learning how to see differently, with openness, with patience, with a heart willing to let go? The first glimpse of light invites a question that resonates beneath the surface of your mind. How do you step into this new way of seeing without losing yourself in the process? For years, you have built walls around your perception walls made from habits, fears, and the need to define everything in neat, familiar terms. These walls gave you a sense of safety, even certainty, but they also kept the world confined within the boundaries of your expectations. The patterns of thought and feeling you relied on were like bricks stacked high, each one placed carefully to protect you from uncertainty and confusion. And yet, Those same walls that offered protection also limited the view. They narrowed the lens through which you experience life, filtering everything through the strict parameters of control and meaning you had unconsciously accepted as truth. Now, as the light you glimpse softly pierces the edges of these walls, they begin to show signs of wear fissures forming where once there was solidity. Letting go of control feels like stepping into an unknown current, one that asks you not to grasp or hold, but to surrender and trust. This surrender is not weakness, it is a bold act of courage, a willingness to release the urge to explain, to predict, to command. It is the moment where the mind's tight grip loosens, making space for a different kind of vision, one that does not try to master the world, but to meet it as it is. This unraveling is not sudden or violent. It does not tear down walls overnight. Instead, it happens quietly, in the subtle shifts of attention, the softening of judgment, the willingness to notice without naming. It happens in the pauses between thoughts, in the spaces where certainty once reigned supreme. To unravel control is to discover the freedom that lives beneath the need to control, a freedom that feels expansive yet intimate, wild yet grounded. It is an invitation to experience the world not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a mystery to be lived. As this process unfolds, you begin to notice how much energy you have spent trying to hold on to ideas, identities, stories, and how exhausting that holding has been. You recognize the ways your mind has circled again and again through familiar loops, attempting to explain what cannot be fully explained, to fix what cannot be fixed. And with that recognition comes a gentle release, a softening of the grip that has kept you tethered to old patterns. This does not mean you abandon your wisdom or your sense of self. Rather, it means you open to the possibility that your sense of self is not as fixed as it seemed, that who you are can be fluid, flexible, and alive in ways you have not yet imagined. In loosening control, you make room for something new, a vision that is not rigid or confined, but free-flowing and expansive. It is a vision that sees the world with fresh eyes, one that meets uncertainty not with fear, but with curiosity. This is the unraveling of control, a journey into the unknown spaces within yourself, where light and shadow mingle, and where true vision begins to take shape. You might feel the discomfort of releasing what has felt familiar and safe, even if it was confining. The urge to hold on is strong like clutching a raft in a stormy sea, but the invitation here is to trust the current, to let yourself be carried rather than resist. There is courage in that surrender, the courage to be vulnerable, to face the unknown without the usual defenses. And in that courage, something remarkable happens. The boundaries between observer and observed begin to blur. The sharp distinctions you relied on soften, revealing that the world is not a separate other, but a fluid dance in which you participate. Control loosens its grip not just on your perceptions, but on your sense of separation. You begin to glimpse the interconnectedness beneath appearances, the subtle threads weaving you into the fabric of all that is. This realization is not an intellectual insight, but a felt experience, a shift in the very way you inhabit your body and mind. You find moments where the urge to judge fades, replaced by a simple presence, watchful, open, without needing to name or change anything. These moments become the seeds of a new way of being, fragile and precious, needing patience and care. There is no rush, no destination to hurry toward. The unraveling of control is a journey without a map, a descent into mystery where every step requires trust. And though the path is uncertain, it is alive with possibility. As the walls crumble and the old certainties fade, you find yourself standing at the edge of something vast and uncharted. You may not know what comes next, but you feel ready to see with fresh eyes, ready to embrace the unknown, ready to follow the light wherever it leads. As you begin to surrender control, you also begin to notice how deeply the need to control has shaped your experience. It colors the way you relate to time, to other people, to your own thoughts and feelings. You realize that your resistance to uncertainty has been a way of trying to preserve safety, but it has also been a source of suffering, a slow constriction that tightens the chest and weighs heavy on the heart. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning care or responsibility. It means shifting from grasping to receiving, from forcing outcomes to allowing what is to unfold. It is the difference between trying to direct every moment and being present enough to respond with grace when moments surprise you. This change calls for patience because the old patterns have a way of creeping back, like shadows that linger long after the sun has set. But each time you return to the light, the quiet clarity beneath the noise, you strengthen your capacity to meet life on its own terms. You become less attached to your opinions, less driven by the need to prove yourself right or safe. You find a new kind of freedom in not knowing, a gentle peace in being held by presence itself, rather than by the stories your mind constructs. This is no sudden transformation, but a gradual unfolding, a slow and steady unraveling that softens the boundaries between who you thought you were and who you are becoming. It is a journey marked by small victories, moments when you catch yourself letting go, moments when you notice the world as if for the first time, moments when you breathe and remember that you are alive and connected. And through it all, the light you glimpsed in the beginning shines quietly, a beacon guiding you deeper into the unfolding mystery of being. As the walls around control begin to crumble, and the steady light you glimpsed earlier grows steadier within you, another truth quietly unfolds. Releasing control is not the same as losing yourself. It is, in fact, a reclamation, a returning home to something deeper and more authentic than the narratives and defenses you've carried so long. Yet this awakening comes with its own subtle challenge. As the familiar structures dissolve, you may find yourself standing in a vast, open space that feels both liberating and terrifying. The ground beneath your feet shifts. The landmarks you once relied upon vanish into mist. In that uncharted expanse, you face a paradox. The more you loosen your grip on certainty, the more you encounter the question of identity itself. Who are you, if not the sum of the stories, roles, and meanings you have painstakingly built? If the masks you've worn begin to fall away, what remains beneath them? This question is not an obstacle, but an invitation, a sacred call to explore the essence of being beyond definition, beyond form. It asks you to step beyond the ego as comforting scripts into the quiet depths where true presence dwells. To journey here is to encounter the delicate dance between presence and absence, between the seen and the unseen. It is a path that invites you to witness not only what you are, but also what you are not. To embrace the fluidity of identity and the mystery of self that resists easy answers. This is the space where transformation unfolds not as a sudden eruption, but as a gentle unfolding, like dawn spreading light over a landscape long shrouded in night. As you begin to navigate this vast interior terrain, you may find that the question of, who am I, loses its urgency and sharpness. It softens into a quiet knowing, an acceptance that identity is less a fixed point and more a living, breathing experience, a river flowing, never the same from one moment to the next. This understanding opens the door to a freedom that is not escapism, but rooted presence, a freedom that allows you to move through life with grace, no longer bound by rigid self-conceptions or the desperate need to control how you appear. In this unfolding, you discover that the self is not an isolated island, but a shimmering interplay of presence and relationship, of light and shadow, of form and formlessness. Here, in this sacred threshold, true vision begins to emerge, a vision not clouded by fear or attachment, but illuminated by the clarity of simply being. Yet stepping into this openness can feel like standing on a cliff's edge, the vast unknown stretching out beneath your feet. The familiar stories and roles that once gave you a sense of identity become fragile, like leaves trembling in the wind. You may find yourself reaching to cling to fragments of what was known, even as they slip through your fingers. This is the tension of transformation, the pull between comfort and growth, between the safety of sameness and the promise of something new. It calls for gentle courage, a willingness to stay with uncertainty, to embrace the discomfort that comes with shedding old skins. The journey beyond the masks is not about erasing the self or dissolving into emptiness. Rather, it is about discovering the vastness within the self, the depth and richness that lies beyond surface appearances. It is about meeting yourself with kindness and curiosity, learning to dance with the ever-changing flow of who you are. In this dance, identity becomes less a fortress and more garden dynamic, alive, and endlessly unfolding. And as you cultivate this inner landscape, you begin to see that identity is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. The question, who am I, is not a puzzle demanding an answer, but a doorway inviting exploration. You learn to hold this question lightly, allowing it to guide you without trapping you. With this shift, the fears that once haunted your sense of self lose their grip. You no longer need to prove yourself or defend against imagined threats. Instead, you find a quiet confidence rooted in the awareness that your true self is not confined by labels or roles, but flows freely in the ever-changing river of experience. This freedom brings with it a profound peace, a surrender not to loss, but to a deeper, more authentic presence. It is here, in this space beyond the masks, that the next phase of your journey begins. A journey not defined by control or certainty, but by openness, fluidity, and the courage to be fully alive in the unfolding mystery of who you are. As you settle into this understanding, you might notice the old fears that once seemed so imposing begin to shrink in the light of new awareness. The fear of being seen as flawed or inadequate, the fear of rejection, or the terror of emptiness. All these shadows lose their power when faced with the gentle presence you cultivate within. You realize that these fears were tied to the fragile constructs of identity, to the stories you told yourself about what you needed to be worthy or safe. Now, without those stories to prop them up, the fears reveal themselves as passing clouds, moving across the vast sky of your consciousness, never permanent, never defining. This revelation does not come as a sudden triumph, but as a quiet unfolding, a slow dawn of understanding that brings with it a softness in your gaze, not just toward the world, but toward yourself. You begin to witness your own humanity with compassion, embracing your vulnerabilities and imperfections as part of the rich tapestry that makes you whole. In this place, judgment gives way to acceptance, and the harsh inner critic finds itself replaced by a gentle friend. The masks you once wore to protect yourself are no longer needed, not because you are flawless or perfect, but because you have found strength and authenticity. This strength is not loud or forceful. It is steady and enduring, like the roots of a tree that hold firm even in the fiercest storm. You come to understand that your identity is a living story written anew with each breath, each moment of presence. It is not a cage, but a river flowing freely through the landscape of your being. With this realization, you open to a world of possibility, a world where you can explore who you are without fear or judgment, where you can create and recreate yourself with the same ease with which a river shapes the land through which it flows. This is not a journey with a fixed destination, but a dance with the unfolding mystery of life itself. You learn to move with grace through the currents of change, finding joy not in certainty, but in the endless discovery of who you are becoming. And in this dance, you find a profound peace, the peace that arises not from control or knowing, but from surrendering to the vast, unending flow of existence. After stepping beyond the masks and opening to the fluid nature of identity, you come to face a vast horizon, the unknown that stretches beyond all familiar boundaries. This is a place that both calls and challenges you, where the illusions of certainty fade into a gentle mystery. Your surrender is no longer about giving up, but about opening wide enough to receive life in its fullest depth and complexity. It is a freedom unlike any other, the freedom to let go of the need to control outcomes, to fix meaning, or to cling to safety. Instead, it asks you to lean into the unfolding of the present moment with an open heart and steady presence. This freedom is not born from escape, but from a deep acceptance of what is light and shadow, joy and pain, clarity and confusion, all held together in a delicate balance. To surrender here is to trust the flow of life itself, even when the path ahead is uncertain and the future feels like an uncharted sea. It means embracing vulnerability as strength, uncertainty as possibility, and the unknown as the fertile ground for growth and transformation. In this surrender, you begin to experience life not as a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be lived fully. The paradox of surrender is that it invites you to release control, and yet discover a power far greater than any you have held before. It is the power of presence, the ability to be fully awake and alive in each moment, no matter what arises. As you practice this surrender, you find that the grip of fear loosens, replaced by a quiet courage that does not demand certainty, but welcomes the dance of change. You become like a tree bending in the wind, rooted deeply yet flexible enough to move with the currents of life. This is not a path of ease, nor one without challenge. The unknown can feel daunting, and old patterns of resistance may rise, tempting you to retreat into familiar comforts. Yet with each step into surrender, you cultivate resilience, a resilience born not from pushing against life, but from flowing with it. You learn that freedom is not a distant goal, but a lived experience accessible here and now, in the simple act of allowing. This allowing transforms your relationship with yourself and the world. It softens judgment and opens space for compassion, not only for others, but also for the parts of yourself you have struggled to accept. You come to see that surrender is not about losing your power, but about discovering your truest strength. The strength to be wholly present, wholly human, and wholly alive. As this freedom deepens, you notice a new rhythm emerging in your life, a rhythm marked by ease, flow, and a profound connection to the pulse of existence. You find joy in the simple things, the breath that moves through you, the light shifting across the sky, the laughter of a stranger passing by. These moments are not distractions, but doorways into a deeper awareness, invitations to remember the vastness within and beyond yourself. And though the unknown still holds its mysteries, you no longer face it with fear or resistance. Instead, you meet it with open arms and a trusting heart, ready to walk the path wherever it may lead. This is the freedom of surrender, a freedom that embraces the unknown as the very source of life as beauty and meaning. It is the freedom to live fully, without the weight of needing to know or control. And in that freedom, you discover that you have come home, not to a place or a thing, but to yourself, to the endless unfolding of presence that is the heart of all things. In this surrender, you find a paradoxical strength, a softness that holds without breaking, a stillness that moves with the tides of change. The unknown is no longer a threat, but a sacred space where life breathes freely, where new possibilities arise like stars igniting in the night sky. Each moment of surrender is an act of courage, a choice to trust what cannot be seen, to embrace what cannot be fully understood. It is the dance of life itself, ever-changing, ever mysterious, endlessly inviting you to let go and be. This freedom reshapes the very way you move through the world. You become less burdened by fear and more open to wonder. Your steps become lighter, your heart wider, your vision clearer. And in that clarity, you recognize the profound truth that life's richest gifts are found not in certainty, but in the fearless embrace of the unknown. As you stand now at the edge of this unfolding journey, having glimpsed the light beyond control, touch the fluidity of identity, and embrace the freedom of surrender, there is a profound stillness that settles within. This stillness is not an absence, but a presence, a quiet knowing that beneath all change, beneath every shifting shape and form, there is a place of unshakable peace. It is here, in this vastness, that the journey both ends and begins anew. For the path you walk is not a line drawn from start to finish, but a circle ever turning, an eternal dance between loss and discovery, between holding on and letting go. The questions you once carried, who am I? What do I need to control? Now soften into whispers, gentle companions rather than urgent demands. The answers you seek are no longer distant destinations, but living companions walking beside you, guiding you gently back to presence each time your mind wanders into fear or doubt. This continuous return, this sacred practice of coming back home to yourself, is the heart of the journey, a tender invitation to meet yourself again and again with fresh eyes and an open heart, no matter how many times you may have felt lost. There will be moments of shadow times when old fears resurface, when the temptation to retreat into familiar narratives feels overwhelming. These moments are not setbacks, but part of the rhythm of transformation, natural pulses in the ongoing unfolding. With each challenge, you are called to practice surrender anew, to embrace uncertainty with courage, and to find your way back to the light within. This is not a race to some final achievement, but a slow, patient dance with the mystery of life itself. The freedom you have found here is not a fixed prize, but a living way of being fluid, expansive, and deeply rooted in presence. It is a freedom that honors the paradoxes of existence, the interplay of light and shadow, certainty and mystery, control and surrender. As you carry this freedom forward, you realize you are never truly alone. The path you walk connects you to the vast web of existence, to the countless unseen threads weaving all life together. Every breath you take is a thread in this intricate tapestry, every step a thread linking you to the unfolding story of all that is. This sense of belonging transcends the limits of the mind's understanding, bringing a gentle peace that embraces even the darkest moments. You come to see yourself not as a solitary island, but as part of a vast living ocean, sometimes calm and clear, sometimes wild and unpredictable, but always connected, always whole. With this knowing, you move through the world differently. You become less burdened by the need to control or to prove yourself, and more open to the wonder and mystery that surrounds you. Each encounter, each challenge, each joy becomes an invitation to deepen your presence, to live more fully in the flow of life. And even when the path ahead seems unclear, you trust that you are exactly where you need to be, unfolding at the perfect pace. So walk forward with patience and grace. Trust in the unfolding, even when it feels uncertain or fragile. Open yourself to the possibility that every step, no matter how small, hesitant, or imperfect, is a step closer to the truth that has been waiting within you all along. This truth is simple, yet profound. You are already home, not in a place or a state to be reached, but in the presence that embraces all that you are, light and shadow, question and answer, control and surrender. This presence is your true self, the radiant core that shines beyond all masks and stories. And as you rest here, you discover that the journey was never about becoming someone else or finding something outside yourself, but about remembering who you have always been beneath all the layers. This remembering is both a quiet peace and a powerful awakening. It is a call to live with authenticity, compassion, and openness, to hold both your fears and your hopes with equal tenderness. In this presence, the fragmented pieces of your story begin to weave together into a tapestry richer and more beautiful than you could have imagined. You begin to see that every struggle, every release, every moment of surrender was leading you toward this homecoming. Here, in the depths of your being, lies a boundless freedom, an uncheckable sanctuary where you can return again and again, no matter how far the world pulls you away. The journey continues, ever unfolding, but you walk it with a new rhythm, a new lightness, and a heart wide open. This is the continuous journey home, a sacred dance of presence that invites you to come alive in every moment and to know deeply and surely that you are already whole.